So I know this may be a bit presumptuous, but I think in the future, Stussy, the clone of Buckingham Stussy, will be joining the Straw Hat crew, presumably as their lookout or scout. This then would lead me to think that you could form a bit of a freak trio between her, Vince Smoke Sanji, and Cutty Flam, also known as Frankie, because the interesting thing about these three characters is that they all represent the first of their kind when it comes to modified humans or elevated humans in the One Piece world, either through the history of the One Piece world itself or through the narrative as the reader goes about reading it. Because the first character that we are introduced to like this is Cutty Flam, as Frankie is the first character in the series who flat out states that he is a cyborg. Therefore, Frankie is the first cyborg in the series. Following him, we have the evolution of Vince Smoke Sanji, because as you know, Vince Smoke Sanji is a Germa sibling. And being a German sibling, he is a modified human, but because of his mother's meddling during her pregnancy with the four Vince Smoke boys, he came out a little different, notably weaker than the other three. But then over time, he blossomed, turning into a superhuman, which then led him to become a modified human after being, I guess, genetically activated by his raid suit. This then leads me to think that maybe it's because of his ability to access his emotions, whereas the other Vince Smoke boys don't really have, even though they do have emotions technically, because they can feel things like pride and lust, but they don't have the complexity of emotions that Sanji has. So maybe it's because of his ability to access those complex emotions is what gives him the range and versatility in his abilities that his brothers simply lack. Because unlike them, when he is dislocated or banged up, he can simply straighten himself back out with ease. He doesn't need the assistance of a machine to do so, like how, say, Yonji and the rest of them needed. Then that leads us to Stussy. Stussy, the clone of Buckingham Stussy, is noted to be the first successful human clone in modern One Piece history. Mads is accredited with her creation. So, with that being said, all of them oddly lead to the magnum opus of the Seraphim, which are a creation via Vegapunk, because Seraphim technically are all three aspects of the characters that we're talking about here, because they are clones like Stussy, they are modified humans like Sanji, and seeing as how they are of the Pacifista series and have access to Kizaru's lasers, they technically too are cyborgs like Frankie. And I find it very funny that all three of these characters' parents are associated with Mads, because we have Vegapunk, who was associated with Mads, the original Stussy, Buckingham Stussy, also associated with Mads, Vince Smoke Judge, whom is Sanji's father, associated with Mads, and we have Cyan, better known now as Queen, who presumably is Frankie's father, also associated with Mads. And funnily enough, too, at least one of them, well, I guess technically two, we don't know what the Rock's pirate crew were considered back then, but two of them were, I guess, on Yonko crews, because, of course, Queen was a calamity of the Beast Pirates ran by Kaido, and then Stussy, Buckingham Stussy, was on the Rock's crew. But again, we don't know how highly valued the Rock's crew was back in the day, or if the term Yonko even applied back then, but it is something to think about. With that being said, yeah, I think it's really interesting that so much can be said about these three, and I think it's a bit of a point to have these three in the same organization, seeing as how there seems to be so much narrative value in them, and they are all important pieces, which then lead us to the finality of what the Seraphim are. But with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede What?